أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره مغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا سيئة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميت أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض من أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي له أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثل ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تأكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون. واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون. فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون. أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال ما يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم. للذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأكثر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون. أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم. إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله، يا إمام الرحمة، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين، يا علي بن أبي طالب، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد، يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن علي بن موسى يا أبا الحسن علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا وصي الحسن والخلفاء الحجة أيها المقائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها. By the right of your Imam, ask for your hajat. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وصيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالمين من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
एक बावाज़ बुलंद सलवात पढ़ दिया अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला माँ कहती थी उठ जाग मेरी जान सकीना माँ कहती थी उठ जाग मेरी जान सकीना उठ कर को चले खुल गया जिंदान सकीना माँ कहती थी उठ जा मेरी जान सकीना। बूंदे जो तेरे शिम्र ने छीने वो दिला दूं। बूंदे जो तेरे शिम्र ने छीने वो दिला दूं। एक नन्ही सी चादर में तेरे सर पे उड़ा दूं। घर जाने का अब हो गया सामान सकीना। एक बार मेरे सीने से लग जा जरा उठ कर। एक बार मेरे सीने से उठ जा जरा उठ कर। कहती थी ये माँ कब्र सकीना से लिपट कर। कुछ देर के हैं हम तेरे मेहमान सकीना। मासूम से गालों पे तमाचे भी है खाए। रो रो के कहा करती थी बाबा नहीं आए। रोता है तेरे हाल पे जिंदान सकीना। उठती ही नहीं लाख उठाया है कई बार। लो मर गई लो मर गई आज वो बाबा की आज़ादा। लब खोल जरा में है परेशान सकीना। वारिस न रहा मेरा रहा ना मेरा असगर। जाती सकीना तुम्हें जिंदा में खोकर उजरा है मेरा कैसे गुलिस्तान सकीना बिन तेरे सकीना भला मैं कैसे जीऊंगी बैठूंगी सदा धूप में पानी ना पीऊंगी जाएगी तेरे गम में मेरी जान सकीना मैयत पे सकीना की हरम नोहा कुना थे मैयत पे सकीना की हरम नोहा कुना थे चेहरे पे सकीना के तमाचों के निशा थे लो मर गई शाम की मेहमान सकीना माँ कहती थी उठ जाग मेरी जान सकीना माँ कहती थी उठ जाग मेरी जान सकीना सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The children's workshop is now begun, so requesting children's ages 5 to 12 to be taken upstairs, inshallah. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने हर तमाचे तमाचे पे सकीना ने पुकारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। बाबा मैं शिमर से कहती थी, बाबा मैं शिमर से कहती थी, तुम मेरे पास न आना, दो आलम में सबसे बेहतर है मेरा पाक घराना। मैं छोटी फातिमा ज़हरा हूँ, मैं छोटी फातिमा ज़हरा हूँ, ना मुझको हाथ लगाना, और फिर भी बाबा फिर भी उस जालिम ने किया मुझ पे, किया मुझ पे, बाबा किया मुझ पे तरस जरा ना, मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे, मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे। मैंने सरशिम्र से मांगा जो तुम्हारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। वो जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, वो जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, उनको बेदर्दी सी जालिम ने उतारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, सो के अब खाक पे करती है गुजारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। साथ रहवारों को दोहराया गया है मुझको। साथ रहवारों को दोहराया गया है मुझको। चूर जख्मों से बदन मेरा है सारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने मेरी गुर्बत पे चचा जान का सर रोता है। मेरी गुर्बत पे चचा जान का सर रोता है। उनकी गुर्बत मैं करूं कैसे गवारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा। नौके नेज़ा पे उसे देखूं तो देखूं कैसे। नौके नेज़ा पे उसे देखूं तो देखूं कैसे। मेरा असग़र था मुझे जान से भी प्यारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। बेकफन आप हो बेकफन रहेगी बेटी। बेकफन आप हो बेकफन रहेगी बेटी। एक जैसा ही मुक़द्दर है हमारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने पुकारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Sayyid Abbas Razawi, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم من مصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. Surah Fatiha is requested for the Salih Sawab of the Marhumin listed on the screen and for all Marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Amun Yujibu is requested for the names listed on the screen and for all those in need here and elsewhere. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء. Arba'in program. The Zainabiyya program will start next week on Tuesday, September 13th till September 17th, inshallah. We are honored to have Sheikh Jafar from Toronto, who will be speaking on the topic of attributes for success in the hereafter. Children's Arba'in Workshop. During the upcoming Ashra Zainabiyya programs, Children Workshop will be held from Tuesday to Saturday for 5 to 12 years of age. Please register using the link on the screen. Bulugh Seminar for Parents. On Sunday, September 25th, between 3 to 5 p.m., there will be a Bulugh seminar geared towards parents of boys and girls, led by Sheikh Jafar and Sister Sabiha Jafar. The aim of the interactive session is to discuss the changes and challenges our children experience as they mature and how to support and guide them based on Islamic principles. The program is open to all parents, and there is a registration fee of $10. Please register using the link on the screen. Muharram and Safar Fund. As we continue to provide quality programs, especially for the months of Muharram and Safar, we request all who have attended and will continue to attend or watch the lectures online to make a donation towards these programs. Any amount is welcome. Our budget for the 2 months is $86,500, of which we have collected over $56,000. To make a contribution, please contact Brother Murtaza Karim or Sister Batul Mukhi on the number on the screen, or you can Zelle your donation to donate@masjidhayy.org or go to the link shown on the screen. We will now have Sister Sarah Haji give us a brief announcement on Bibi Sakina Day. By Muhammad wa ali Muhammad Salawat.
The Ladies Committee has organized Bibi Sakina Day this Saturday, September 10th at the Masjid. Please RSVP. The link has been sent out on the weekly newsletter as well as in the WhatsApp broadcast. The program will include a play, a poem by our little angels, spiritual talk by Sister Amara, and Nohas by our youth, and will begin at 3:30 p.m. sharp. All ladies and children are invited and requested to RSVP and attend, inshallah. Supporting the orphans. In the name of Bibi Sakina, we will be collecting funds for the orphans of Iraq and sending it to the Zahra Trust under the Ya Sakina Orphan Aid Project. We kindly request everyone to donate generously to this noble cause. To donate, please Zelle your contribution to donate@masjidhayy.org and in the memo put Ya Sakina Orphan Aid. There will also be a boys' majlis the same day at 3:30 p.m. for the boys ages 6 to 10 years. The program will include a short majlis on Bibi Sakina, Marshia, and Nohas. If your child would like to recite, please contact Brother Zaidi. at 312-498-1998.
At this time, I would like to invite Sayyid Abbas Razawi to deliver tonight's majlis with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Can I request all of you to come forward, please? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره صدق الله العلي العظيم. Tonight is our final session of these last couple of days. Tonight is a night that really breaks your heart. And the reason being is that tonight is a night that breaks Sayyid al-Shuhada's heart. From the time of Maghrib, there's a spiritual sadness that one feels. The minute that Maghrib sets in, and that continues until Fajr time. The reason is very simple. There are certain times of the year which bring about sadness, and you don't know why. And the reason being, our hadith says, is because the Imam is sad. There's a hadith that says that sometimes you wake up in the morning and you don't realize why you're happy. Know that the Imam is happy. And similarly, there's a tradition to say that sometimes you wake up sad, or sometimes during the day your heart changes. Now, we're not talking about physical sadness, we're talking about spiritual sadness. Heart changes in one direction, heart changes in another. These are for those people whose heart's connected to the Imam of the time. Similarly, you find that with everything, whether it's dua, whether it's starting work, getting married, or whatever it may be, there are different awqats, timings, that Allah has preserved, that if a person follows according to those timings, you find maximization of what you want to do. In particular, they say that when it comes to dua, for example, 10 minutes before Fajr is a very powerful time. Allama Majlisi's father said, he's Majlisi because of me. Because of that dua that I did 10 minutes before Fajr. This is why my son became the way that he is. Similarly, you find just before Maghrib on a Friday, there's a dua for the 12th Imam on that time, that if a person was to pray, dua becomes mustajab. Now, this term mustajab is important. You may ask, not everybody's dua becomes mustajab. Why is that? The reason being is this, because the sharait, the criteria, the conditions are not there. For us, sometimes when we're praying, we're walking, we're talking, there's certain conditions and criteria. The dhikr is the final one. Reciting a particular supplication is the final condition. There are multiple different conditions before that. When that happens, dua becomes mustajab. Many a time, you've seen it, I've seen it, you've seen miracles take place. I've seen them take place. Things that you can't even describe, why it happened, how it happened. But you know the best form of dua is, when it's accepted, is when a person's heart's broken and they submit to Allah saying that I have nothing other than you. At that point you find that dua is accepted. When nothing is there, you've exhausted everything, because you find human beings as such. When a problem befalls, you'll knock on one door, and you'll knock on the other door, and you'll knock on the other door. Had you gone directly to the door of Allah, so what happens? Everyone turns you away until that moment comes when you submit in front of Allah. Look and see. Throughout history you've seen that Allah tests everyone. He tests His prophets. Who does Allah test? Look at Ibrahim, the way He tests him. Tests Khullat Ibrahim. So what does He do? He takes him, He chucks him into the fire, right? Evidently Namrud chucks him into the fire. Jibreel starts having a dialogue with Allah. He says, look Allah, your Khalil is being chucked into the fire. Your Khalil is being chucked into the fire. What should I do? He says, go help him, see what happens. Come to understand why he's Khalil. So as Jibreel comes down, he says, look, you've been chucked into the fire, would you like my help? Ibrahim says, I need help, but not from you. Who do I need help from? Allah. This is when Allah says to Jibreel, this is why he's my Khalil. Do you know the difference between a Rafiq and a Khalil is? Two names of friends in Arabic. Khalil is a person who only relies on his friend. Rafiq can be a person, you can rely on multiple different people. Khalil is a person who only replies. Why? Takhallul, there's permeation of his soul that's taken place. And here Ibrahim has that status. To the extent that when Allah gives the hukum, now go and sacrifice your son, you find Ibrahim is willing to do that. Okay, his capacity was that there was no sacrifice that took place. But the fact was this, Ibrahim submitted. That's why he became Ibrahim. So what happens? Ibrahim is told, come, build the foundation of the Kaaba. He comes and he builds the foundations of the Kaaba. And then after that, what does Allah say? He says, call the whole world to Hajj. Ibrahim says, look at me. I'm going to call the whole world to Hajj. How far is that going to spread? 2 meters, 20 meters, 100 meters? Allah says, Ibrahim, you call, I'll make sure your voice spreads. So what does he do? He calls the people. What does Allah call him? Da'i Allah. From then onwards, every single soul until the Day of Judgment, in your DNA, it's to go to Hajj. Right? Or the call is there. Now maybe you don't go to Hajj in your lifetime. Okay, fine, you don't do that. Doesn't make you a bad person. But there's a tawfiq there that Allah, when He spread it to every single soul, you find that there were people who said labbaik in alam arwah. Now imagine, that is Ibrahim. Go again and see. Look at the other side. What do you notice? Dua of Rajab. Open it up. What do you say about Imam Hussein? Now, at every stage we've been told, ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Thursday night, ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Friday morning, ziyarat of Imam Hussein. 13th Rajab, ziyarat of Imam Hussein. But this ziyarat that you recite in Rajab, what do you say? Labbaik ya da'i Allah. Right? Who are you calling now? Imam Hussein. In the same way that Ibrahim calls the whole world to come to Hajj, you find at Asr time, Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura says something as well. He calls everyone towards him. Hal min nasir yansurana. Does Hussein need your help? Hussein needed your help. It was only one person he needed. Didn't need him, he called him. Who did he call? Habib ibn Mudahir. Does Hussein need anybody after that? Look at the tradition. He doesn't do. You see, the adab which you find of an imam or a prophet is this. They never disgrace you. They don't say, if you don't come, you're going to go to hell. They say, no, come and help me. Hussein doesn't need your help. It's the way of the Quran, the way Allah works. When Allah addresses you, what does He say? He says, those people who give me a loan, Allah doesn't need a loan, He's ghani. The language of the Quran is such. There's a humility in the way that they ask. What does Imam Hussein do? He asks with humility. But that cry was for all of creation. That whoever comes and says, labbaik to Sayyid al-Shuhada, you notice at least once in their life they go for arba'in. at least once in their life, to come to Sayyid al-Shuhada. Now let's say even if you don't do it, doesn't make you a bad person, but there's a tawfiq there that's required. Look at it and see. That's one thing. Now develop this discussion, take it a step further. What else do you see? Take that step a step further. Yusuf. Nabi Allah, Yusuf. What happens? 40 years, one hadith says, separated from his father, chucked in a well. After that, taken into slavery, left for dead, put in jail. Everything happens. He's patient. Sabr, 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 sabr. Sabr of Yusuf is famous. Sabr of Yaqub is famous. So what does Allah say? Look at the tradition. Yusuf was so patient, there was an overflow of mercy. Rahma bihi ummatan. Allah blesses, puts mercy on Bani Israel. All of them because of Yusuf's sabr. One nation becomes elevated because of the sabr, of the patience of Yusuf, forbearance. Now let me tell you one more thing and see. Hussein was so patient in Karbala that until the day of judgment, all of you have overflow of mercy of Hussein. There's an overflow, but look, remember, what's the condition of overflow though? For everything there's a condition, right? Overflow is this: you come together. Separately you're a nation as well, but together you're a stronger nation. When the Shia come together, Nusrat of Allah comes down. How many of them were there in the Battle of Badr? And how many of the others were there? What happens? They were united, they were together. What happens? Rahmah of Allah comes down. Karbala, there were only 72. Imam Hussein had to send them out one by one. What happens? The overflow of mercy was such that until this day, Hussein is successful. Until this day, nobody names their son Yazid. Until this day, Yazid is seen as evil. Who won in Karbala? In Karbala, Hussein ibn Ali won. He showed you how to die in the way of Allah to safeguard the religion of Allah. Right? Understand this. Look, had Hussein come out alive, you wouldn't remember it. It was a battle that took place, it finished. Hussein giving his life is something different. What happens? Until the end of time, Hussein is remembered. That's why we come here. What brings us together? Look, until the end of time is remembered. Gave his blood. Sacrifice. His Ma'raj begins where Ibrahim's Ma'raj stops. Ibrahim's potential was this. This is why Hussein became Warith of the Anbiya. Look, Ghadir is a time where Allah says in the Quran, وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَتَهُ. If you've not delivered this, gone. Adam to Khatam, the entire Risala is in waste. But you don't go to Amir al-Mu'minin and say, Assalamu alayka warith Adam asifatullah. Think about it. Who is he? Warith of Anbiya. 124,000 prophets. Ali is that warith. This is why Allah says, Al-yawma kamaltu lakum dinakum. The day where deen is perfected is where Ali's wilayah comes into play. But Allah never turns around and says, he's warith of the Anbiya. Who becomes warith of the Anbiya? One Hussein becomes warith of the Anbiya. This is why when you go, Ali's wilayah saved by Hussein, and Rasulullah's Nabuwah saved by Hussein. In fact, look, if I take it a step further, Zahra's hard work saved by Hussein. In Bayt al-Huzn you find, one is Risala. Who is embodying Risala? Zahra is embodying Risala. What does she do? She takes Risala and she connects it to Imama, right? We have traditions on this to say. When we talk about Maraj al-Bahraini and Taqiyan, what are those two oceans? One ocean is Risala, one ocean is Imama, Wilaya. But that ocean of Risala is not Rasulullah. That ocean of Risala is symbolic for Zahra. The ocean of Imama is symbolic for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Barzakh in the middle is Rasulullah. So what does Zahra do? She takes the nur of Rasulullah and puts it into the nur of Imama. Think about it. You know why that's I tell you why that's important to understand. The reason being is this: the only person you find that is connected to that light is Fatima alayhi salam. Look, I'll tell you why. That fruit which was haram on Adam, from that tree a fruit came. Hadith says when that fruit came, it came for Rasulullah. Safeguarding that fruit were 4 angels. These angels are the angels of Alam Kawn. If you go through Surah Fatiha, you'll see in every Surah Fatiha can be divided into 4 parts. When a person sits down and does amaliyat, if I wanted to get a dua answered, let's say, I'd sit down, I'd recite Fatiha in a particular way by calling 4 angels, right? I'm not going to go into it, I'll just give you an explanation. Those 4 angels are who? Jibreel, Israfil, Israel, Mikael. 4 of those angels are those angels of Alam Kawn that uphold the universe. All 4 of them are synonymously found in the first chapter of the Quran. These 4 angels, there's special a'mal for that. When you want a hajjah, you can harness that energy and get that hajjah. Don't ask me afterwards, I cannot tell you, just like that. But the fact is that there are 4. And there are multiple durdail and etc., etc. Multiple different angels that you call taskhir, this different a'mal of taskhir and all sorts of things, but without going into ulum al-ghariba. Just to let you know, there are 4 angels. Those 4 angels never come on the earth. The king of Tawheed amongst the angels is known as Israfil. This is why if you look at all of the letters of the alphabet, Arabic letters, every letter has a muwakkil behind it. Muwakkil of Alif is the muwakkil of Tawheed, who is Israfil. Muwakkil of Ba symbolizes creation. Muwakkil of Ba is Jibreel. This is why Jibreel controls Alam Kawn. In the sense he's the angel, archangel for that. And we could go forward. Again, my discussion is not to do with angels. But bringing everything together, there are 4 of these angels. They never come down together. All of those 4 angels came down for one reason, and that was to pass this fruit to Rasulullah. In that fruit contained the nur of Fatima that Allah wanted to put into Rasulullah, to be able to then, if you look at the tradition, what do you see? When Adam is created and 124,000 prophets are in front of him and all of humanity is there, Allah shows Adam and he says, these are the souls of all of your progeny. Adam looks up, he's happy. All of a sudden a light comes and that nur engulfs all of the universe. He says, is that nur also from me? He says, no. That nur is from the final prophet. That nur is specially going to be given to the final prophet. That nur is not from you. And this is why Rasulullah would say, if I want to smell my brother Jibreel, I'd go to my daughter Fatima. Because when that fruit does come down, one tradition says, it says Jibreel's wujud. Now remember, Jibreel isn't physical. Jibreel isn't physical. The hadith says, sweat from Jibreel came out. Now, this again is symbolic for you to understand. Basically, a part of the wujud of Jibreel came into that apple. Meaning what? Meaning Fatima's existence is malakuti. Fatima's existence is jabaruti. In her human essence, she contains all of the various levels of creation. And then when Rasulullah ate, that hukum was given, now go to the house of Khadija. And when you go into the house of Khadija, this time around, do not pray, transfer this light into Khadija. And that's what happened. Rasulullah went, light was transferred. This light was important. Why? Because this light synthesizes Imama and Risala. To take it a step further, look, today as we're here, I don't even know why I've raised this topic, but the most important part of this topic is this. If you understand the status of Fatima alayhi salam, only then can you truly understand the secrets of Karbala. Because within the nights of Fatima rests the secrets of Ashura. And Ashura is that secret that if it was to open up to people, truly then you would come to understand Allah. This is why ziyarah to Ashura is important. If you look at the entire ziyarah is Hadith Qudsi. Those people who put doubt upon it, they don't understand the significance and the lataif of the ziyarah itself. If you look at it, all of it comes to 2 things. Tawheed is tabarra and tawalla. The minute you say La, you are negating masi. Well, everything is negated. Illallah is tawalla. Therefore, tashayyu begins on tabarra, ends on tawalla. In the same way, ziyarat Ashura as such, if you look at the formulas within that, it starts on tabarra, negation of everything which is enmity towards Ahlul Bayt, and then that salawat on Ahlul Bayt that comes enlivens the heart. There is no way you can reach your full potential for as long as you have hatred in your heart, or even love in your heart, or connection in your heart for that which is against Ahlul Bayt. And against Ahlul Bayt is what? Human characteristics such as lying, cheating, stealing, and so forth. Tabarra is absolute negation. It's not just the people. Those people are synonymous for something. And those people are synonymous for vices. Ahlul Bayt is not. Ahlul Bayt is synonymous for Allah. That when you follow Ahlul Bayt, effectively you're becoming God-like, because you're adopting all of the qualities of God inside of yourself. This is why Ziyarat Ashura is. Look, now that we're on this, there was a very famous Arif by the name of Sayyid Musa Zarabadi. Now you've heard of Ayatollah Bahjat a lot, but Musa Zarabadi is also a teacher like Qadi, which people don't know about, because they haven't started discussing this yet. So let's start off the discussion now, so inshallah in the future many other ulama can discuss it. Said Musa Zarabadi, you don't know about him much because he died when he was 59 years old. But even Ayatollah Bahjat would say he was Sahib Karamat. When Allama Hafiziyan says, Allama Hafiziyan is one of those people who in the occult, Ulum al-Ghariba, you've not seen anyone like that. There are people sitting here who are related to some of the Khojas of Karachi. Some of your elders who I've spoken to before have said that we saw in Bombay and after partition in Karachi, when Hafiziyan used to come, we had 2-meter water swimming pool. Hafiziyan would walk on the pool. He was reciting something. When he used to stop, he used to start going down. Recited, comes back up again. For those people who are wearing Hirza Jawad, that Hirza Jawad which you wear as a ring was made by Hafiziyan. Otherwise, Hirza Jawad is tied on your arm. Hafiziyan is that person who today, if you go to Kashmir, in a place called Sufi Pura, he put Isma Adam in a particular place, open challenge. He said, for as long as that Isma Adam is there, if anyone comes and asks for anything on the 15th of Sha'ban and prays 2 units of prayers there, even after I'm dead, know that their dua will become mustajab. COVID hit everywhere. Sufi Pura was protected because Hafiziyan had protected that. He said, for as long as the ta'weez is there, no waba, no bala can come into this village. So if that Hafiziyan says, right, that Hafiziyan turns around and says, and afterwards, when he went back to Masjid, that famous shrine at the moment, the Zari, was made by Hafiziyan. He died in 1980. But the Hafiziyan, imagine. Tayyul Ard, Hafiziyan. Tayyul Sama, Hafiziyan. Tayyul Ma, Hafiziyan. You've heard Tayyul Ard? Have you heard Tayyul Sama? The ability to go into the sky. Hafiziyan at that. Now look, I'm not here to talk about the fadail of Hafiziyan. But Hafiziyan would say, he says, look, he lived in Masjid for the last 10 years of his life. He said, if anyone came to my door and knocked on it, I wouldn't open it, I'd give him a hajjah if it wasn't for Imam Raza alayhi salam. Because I believe that that would be insulting to him, they should go to him. Right? Hafiziyan says, he says, I was 7 years old when I became a student of Nuqudaki Isfahani. Nuqudaki Isfahani is famous. If you look around and see, in Iran, if you go to Masjid, all the du'as and everything else, people have hajjah, they go, open up the books, try and looking for amal of Nuqudaki. Nuqudaki says, by the time he was 14, everything I had, I've taught him. That's Hafiziyan. By the time 14, everything Nuqudaki Isfahani had, he said, I taught Hafiziyan. Said Abul Hasan Hafiziyan. So he says after that, he says, when Hafiziyan was 14, 15, a person by the name of Mujtaba Qazwini comes to him. Now why is Mujtaba Qazwini famous? Because he's the son-in-law of Sayyid Musa Zarabadi. He has a student who is alive today. His name is Sayyid Ali Sistani. So Mujtaba Qazwini turns around to Hafiziyan and says, look, I'm going to take you to a teacher that you're going to be impressed by. Come, let's go to Qazwin. Hafiziyan says, I was walking, I could smell Imam al-Rida walking past. I walked into the room thinking that I've completed everything. He says, as I walked through the room and I came to see Sayyid Musa Zarabadi, I felt like a drop in front of an ocean. The guy's magnetism, soul, taskhir was such, he'd grabbed my soul, he pulled it towards me. He turned around and he says to him, Hafiziyan says, he says, I can smell the smell of Imam al-Rida. He says, yes, that's because you used to pass here. He says that when I sat down with Hafiziyan says, when I sat down with Sayyid Musa Zarabadi, then I understood that this man had control over the muwakkil of the sun. And there are many stories about him. His son says, Sayyid Jalil, Sayyid Khalil, 2 of his sons, they've passed away now. Sayyid Jalil would say, when he would come to Qawm, he would say, look, I didn't even want to become an alim. He says, my father says, look, you should go and study Hausa. He says, look, I don't want to study Hausa. And then he says, okay, I'll study Hausa on one condition. He says, what's the condition? He says, you teach me, father. You teach me, I'll come. He says, after the first 3 years, my father died. So they asked him, how did you complete your studies? He said, the day he died and we buried him, the next day his soul came back and taught me all of the books every single day at a set time until I finished everything. Those are people in the 20th century. You've not heard about them yet. And perhaps you will do one day. But why do I mention Said Musa Zarabadi? For one reason. Said Mujtaba Qazwini says, Ayatollah Sistani's teacher, spiritual master. He says that me and Hashim Qazwini, both of us went to Said Musa Zarabadi. And we said, look, we want Isma Adam. We want Isma Adam. So he turns around and he says, look, okay, you want Isma Adam? I'll teach you a way of getting Isma Adam. Because remember, Isma Adam is not just a name. Isma Adam is a state of being. It's a hal. It's not just a name. We talk about 72 letters. You may talk about this name, that name. No, Bismillah contains Isma Adam, Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum. Actually, no, it's a hal. It's like a seed. You recite it, but it becomes a hal. It becomes a state of being. Right? That's how Isma Adam is developed. So he says, we said to Said Musa, I said, look, can you help us with this? He replied, he says, I can do. I'm going to give you a formula though. I want you to go and apply that formula. He says, what's the formula? He says, go, Zaman and Makan, make sure it's one. Clothes, make sure is one. Make sure the time is one. Zaman, Makan. Recite Ziyarat Ashura 100 times La'an, 100 times Salawat. Fix a time. Don't mess around with the time. Then see what happens. Said Mujtaba Qazwini says, Ayatollah Sistani's teacher. He says that I recited it for 2.5 years. Same time, same Zaman, same Makan, same clothes, same place. 2.5 years later, he says, I saw Sayyid Shuhada come into my dream. He gave me a smile. Now look, such an easy formula. And we don't even know what Ziyarat Ashura is for. People say, look, I'm reciting Ziyarat, I can't get married. Allahumma la'an awwala zalimin zalama haqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. You're going to recite that to get married? There's other du'as to get married. Ziyarat Ashura is to raise your ma'rifah. Ziyarat Ashura, by the way, is not for everyone, everything. Every hajjah, it's a myth when people say, no, why? But Ziyarat Ashura is for elevation of soul, spirit. Look at the mafhum of the ziyarah, then think about why I'm reciting it. Okay, you have enemies, fine, maybe that may work. Property, I need to buy this house, let's recite Ziyarat Ashura. Ziyarat Ashura not for these things. There's other du'as for these things. Ziyarat Ashura is for your ruh to fly. Right? It's for your ruh to fly. It's not for itlaq, it's not for everything, by the way. That's why when people come and they say, well, it didn't work. And it didn't work because it's not for that. Ziyarat Ashura is for specific things based on its mafhum, but Ziyarat Ashura is there for you to get Isma Adam. It's from the Arsh. So imagine this. Why is that? Because Ziyarat Ashura is Tawheedi. Ziyarat Ashura increases your iman. If recited with the correct sharait and the correct amount of la'an and salawat, it increases your ma'rif of the imam. And remember one thing, you cannot reach Allah without a wasila. Everything that you do is with a wasila in this world. From your thinking to your rationalizing, everything that you have is with a wasila. Allah doesn't even come directly to the prophets, He sends Jibreel to them. Everything has a wasila. The wasila for ma'rifatullah is ma'rifat of your imam. Why? Because your imam is that zaman and makan where the dhuhurat of Allah's asma and sifat come from. When people ask, they say, look, what does Nadi Ali mean? What does Nadi Ali mean? Is it correct? Is it not correct? Well, firstly, there's enough traditions within Sunni tradition to, in fact, I've seen so many Sunni traditions on this, on Nadi Ali. But the thing is, why is Nadi Ali important? Just look at the mafhum itself. Nadi Ali, colon Ali, Madhhar al-Ajaib. It's Madhhar, by the way. Madhhar al-Ajaib. Makan al-Dhuhur of Ajaib, which is the sifat and asma of Allah. Basically, if you want to see Allah's tajalli in its full on earth, go to Najaf and look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Look, generally I wouldn't recite a majlis like this, and when I sat here I wasn't planning to recite this. We were looking at Shaitan's biography. But sometimes I think a bit of dosage of wilaya is important. Because that wilaya, when it's there, that in itself is a security for you. Why? Arba'in is coming. That connection, wilaya really is what? Submission to the will of the Imam. Submitting to the Imam means submission to Allah. Because in the heart of the Imam is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim and Al-Kareem and Al-Jawad and Ra'uf and so forth. When all of these names are, what are you doing? Submitting to the will of the Imam. And if you're not submitting to the will of the Imam, then what are you doing? You're going in a different direction. Submission to the will. Everything has an adab though. Look, to unlock wilaya requires adab. Requires adab. How we sit, how we behave, how we come to a majlis, how we come together to mourn, all of that. Sitting together, shoulder to shoulder, in and of itself is a barakah, is part of the adab of a majlis. Even if there's two people in a hall, if both sit together, that is the adab of a majlis, for argument's sake. And listen, we're here to educate, we're here to discuss this. You may not know this. We're here to discuss this, so that you do know this. Because tomorrow, or when Jafar comes inshallah, when you are observing all of that, you get more energy. You get more understanding, you get more ma'rifah. Why do you think when you pray you stand shoulder to shoulder? Allah's bound you in there. When we're here doing dhikr of Hussein is nothing less than ibadah itself. It is ibadah. So here the same pattern applies. Where you're shoulder to shoulder here, you're shoulder to shoulder here. Right? Where you're in sync there, you're in sync here. And it gets to a stage that says that Shia's hearts are in sync. Once the door opens, then the Shia's hearts are in sync. Look. Just looking at the time. Look, just understand this. Our journey in life is a short one. Life terminates quickly. Where we need to get is a lofty position. If we travel by ourselves, you'll never get there. Grab the hand of somebody who's been there and come back again. What do you see in Mi'raj? Rasulullah is going to those places where no Anbiya has gone. That it gets to a stage where Jibreel says, that's it, I can't go any further. Jibreel is Nur. Rasulullah's Nur says, look at the hadith, 70,000 veils of light and darkness in the wujud of Rasulullah itself. Rasulullah got to Maqam al-Mahmud. By getting to that maqam, he's got the keys to Shafa. But he encodes that and he encrypts that and he puts it in a language that we need to understand what it is. Look, let me say one more thing. Heaven and hell is not physical. Heaven and hell has no existence independent of you. Heaven and hell is carried by you on a daily basis. Think about what I've just said. Heaven and hell is not a place. Heaven and hell is carried by you. When you die, it manifests. It's inside of you now. Everything you're doing, you're creating yourself heaven or hell. There's no physical location called hell or heaven. You manifest it the minute you go into alam barzakh. So therefore you can be hell in barzakh, and on qiyamah you can be in heaven. What is it? You're building upon yourself. And remember this also, Allah doesn't make heaven and hell. You make it. Okay, qudrat is from Allah. Look, this qaba that I'm wearing, Allah didn't directly make it. He gave qudra to the tailor who sewed this and made it for me. Behind it is Allah. Wasila is the tailor. Watch that you're wearing, watchmaker made it. Wasila is the watchmaker. Qudrat, Allah's. Everything that takes place on earth, there's only one mawjood in the world, and that's Allah. Everything else is a shadow of what it is. Everything here that's been created, wasila. Mic was created by a wasila. A person made it, a mechanic. Qudrat given by Allah. Same way heaven and hell. Heaven and hell is not directly made by Allah. What makes heaven and hell? Look at the hadith and see. Hubb of Fatima makes heaven, bughz of Fatima makes hell. So if you want to know how you're going to go to heaven, heaven is not made by the amount of prayers that you do. Khawarij pray more than you. You go to Mecca today, you'll see some people praying much more than you are. Islam hasn't got further than this though. It's not about that, it's about how much manifestation of that love that you have. So you see that in the hearts of people, you see it. Some people come to the mosque, you can see that love manifesting. I'm going to get to this point, but I want to say one more thing. One day Amir al-Mu'mineen is coming into Mecca. One of his companions comes to him. Zahiran was Kumail. Kumail says, Mawla, come and see, there's a young man who's praying. His tears are dripping to the ground. Look how pious he is. Imam says, come, he comes forward and he sees him. He says, yeah, okay. Young man is praying, everybody's gathered around, tears are dripping, everything else. He finishes, Amir al-Mu'mineen asks him, he says, son, do you know the secret of prayer? Do you know the asrar of salah? He says, no. He continues to pray. Imam continues to walk. Kumail comes forward and he says, look, you asked a question. Can you answer it? What is the asrar or the sir of salah? He says, Kumail, I am. He says, I am. If you understand me, my Nuraniya, you understand Salah. Otherwise, your Salah is void. So Allah doesn't accept a prayer void of wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? Because it's like starting prayer without wudu. Your clothes are najis. You have no wudu. You're not even facing the qibla. So what are you doing? Allahu Akbar. Allah says, come with me with the conditions, then I'll accept it. What is the condition? Wudu, clean clothes. But these are outwardly. What is the batin of all of this? Batin is that your heart submits to Waliullah, Wali Kamil. Then your body submits towards Kaaba. Why? Because so that's what's important. Now look, if we're all coming here without having our hearts submitted, nor do we understand Zahra alayhi salam, nor do we know the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, nor do we have any ma'rif of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, nor do we even shed a tear for Imam Hussein. Why is that? Because we don't have ma'rif of Imam Hussein. And we all stand there like idols, ready to pray, not understanding that the key to open ma'rifatullah is ma'rifat of the wali. Well, the key is open. This is why, you see, Rasulullah said something. The way that he does things is amazing. He didn't say my love. He says ajr is for them, mawadda for qurba. Now every Sunni tafsir, if you look at it, all the tafasir say qurba is Fatima. It's interesting. We say Ahlul Bayt, right? They don't. It's muannas. Illa al-mawaddata fil qurba, muannas. Who's it for? Zahra. Jalaluddin Suyuti says this qurba is Zahra. Tabari says qurba Zahra. We say Ahlul Bayt. Imagine the irony that the one that you're meant to give love towards, ajr towards, and today those very people, what did they do? Let's take the Sunni translation for the time being. No ajr that the Prophet requires but mawadda for the family or for Zahra itself. Now if you go and look at our traditions, how do you give ajr to her? Sixth Imam says, very simple formula. Sixth Imam presents. They say one day, the Imam was walking and he was crying because it was the day of Ashura. So somebody comes to the sixth Imam and they say, Mawla, how long are you going to cry for? And how continuously are you going to cry for? Mawla replies very beautifully. He says, look, listen, the only reason we cry is to gladden the heart of Fatima. Only reason we cry. Ajr, mawadda. Why is crying? Mawadda is an active, right? Mawadda is not like hubba. Mawadda itself needs manifestation. So in Arabic there's different types of love. Mawadda is an active love. It's not just harboring it in your heart, it has to be manifest. You beat your chest, active love. Tears come out, active love. You give niyaz for the sake of active love. You come clean the mosque, active love. If it's done for the sake of Ahlul Bayt. And what do the Ahlul Bayt do? Tick. Remember one thing. There is nothing in this world that you do for the sake of Ahlul Bayt that they don't return to you. Because Ahlul Bayt hold no debt on their shoulders. They don't do it. Even somebody like Marwan, when he comes, let me give you a story. He closed the door behind. There's two kids shooting one way, shooting the other way. Where's the kids? Right, salawat, please. When Yazid attacked, or he made a decision to attack Mecca and Medina, Hasin ibn Umair, Muslim ibn Aqaba, all of these guys, they came, 100,000 men. The ransacking of Mecca and Medina is famous. 1,000 illegitimate children were born. Rasulullah's mosque was used as a stable, right? The entire ransacking of Mecca and Medina that takes place. When that takes place, tradition says that Marwan, who was an Umayyi, who was in Medina, he says to one of his companions, he says, listen, if Yazid is about to attack, those Shamis are not going to tell that I'm an Umayyi or he's a Hashimi. What can we do? He says, what is there to do? So his servant says something. He says, look, if you want to be preserved, there's one person we suggest you go to who'll help you. So Marwan was very upset at that stage. He was very worried, what should I be doing? Very sad as, what should we be doing? Somebody said to him, they said to him, look, go to Ali Zain al-Abidin. He said, but I killed his father. He said, but you'll find him to be very merciful. They said when Marwan came to the door of the Imam and he knocked on the door, Imam goes barefoot. Imam opened the door. He said, what would you like? He said, Yazid's sending an army, he's going to ransack Medina. He said, I need sanctuary. He said, I have women, I have children, I have elders. Imam doesn't say anything but this. He says, I've got a house outside of Medina. Why don't you go there and you give me your women, children and elders. I'll protect them. They say Marwan himself, as khabis that he was, he started shaking. Tears came in his eyes. First time, he asked a question. He says, Ali ibn al-Hussein, when we Umayyas are in power, we're oppressive. When we're in trouble and we come to you Hashimis, you're merciful. He says, what's the reason why that is? Imam Zain al-Abidin replies, he says, Marwan, there's a difference between us and you. He says, your mother is Hind, our mother is Zahra. That is the door of Ahlul Bayt. And that's the door that you hear tonight. Listen, my discussion comes to an end. It's been a fruitful week. Allah increase all of your tawfiqat. May Allah keep all of you connected to this masaib and fadail of Ahlul Bayt. May Allah protect your children. And in this time where it's dangerous, Allah protect your children. Tonight is a painful night, is a heavy night, as I said, for all of us. Hussein's heart didn't break in Karbala on the day of Ashura. Say the Shuhada's heart breaks when dhulm takes place in Sham. Look, I went through and analyzed. Ahlul Bayt, their daughters are connected to their fathers. They say that when the Prophet of God went to Taif, a number of days after the death of Khadija, he knew he had a 5-year-old yatim at home. He says he goes, traditions say, they stoned him from head to toe. When he was coming back, he was covered in blood. He's covered in blood. As he was coming to his house, he was thinking to himself that I have a yatima there. Her mother's just died. If she sees me in this state, how's she going to feel? Tradition turns around and says that a 5-year-old girl was standing next to the door waiting for her father to come. When she saw her father from a distance, she could see the embarrassment on his face. Hadith says she went running and she puts both of her arms around his knees because she was so small she couldn't do it around his neck. And she says to her father, come down. father comes down with a small hand, she wipes the blood from his face, and she says, don't worry, if my mother's not here, I'm here for you. Imagine, this is one 5-year-old daughter. Look, today, to the haqq of Azza, even if there's one of you. Why? Today you need to give condolences to Imam Hussein. For Imam Hussein, today is nothing less than Ashura. If Ali Akbar fell to the ground with his chest open, today Sakina fell to the ground as well. Tradition says though that her back was bent. Second daughter, there's Sayyidah Zainab. Sayyidah Zainab was very close to her father, tradition says. Tradition says that for the last time when Amir al-Mu'mineen came to Fatima alayhi salam, takes her for the last time and he puts her in her grave. She said, recite some Quran. Hadith says, Zahra was lying there in the grave. Amir al-Mu'mineen was in the grave reciting Quran. And as he was reciting Quran, 33-year-old line of God, finishes Quran. He knows now it's time to get up and get out. They say when he tried to get up, his knees gave way and he fell to the ground. When he fell to the ground, he felt embarrassed. When he looked up, he saw Salman was looking at him. Salman just said one thing. She said, Mawla, I never saw you fall in Khaybar like this. What makes you fall? Amir al-Mu'mineen couldn't make eye contact. You know why? Because two small boys were standing there, one Hassan, one Hussein. So he was feeling embarrassed. Do you see a father? Father doesn't collapse in front of his children, right? Especially if it's Amir al-Mu'mineen. He felt embarrassed. He couldn't make eye contact with his children. Second time he tries to get up. Hadith says again his knees gave way, again he collapses. Second time he collapses. He says, but when the third time comes, he puts his hand on the wall of the grave and tries to rise. And as he stands up, he can feel his knees were shaking. What does Imam do? The only thing he could do, tradition says he calls somebody. Well, who does he call? He says, Zainab, come and help me because your father's feeling weak. Tradition says a 5-year-old girl comes, puts her arms out, says, Father, give me your hands. Third daughter, Sakina. Look at the tradition and see. What made Sakina die? It wasn't the fact that she was beaten. Tradition says what made Sakina die was when she was watching Yazid hit her father's lips. Trauma was too much for her. The beating that Yazid gave, because remember, she wasn't there in the Maqtal standing watching Sayyid al-Shuhada fall. Yazid's beating of the face of Imam Hussein shook this 4-year-old girl. So a time came. She went into the prison, she was lying down. Yazid was lying down. Tradition says Yazid got up. He says, I can hear somebody crying. Who's crying? His servant replies, he says, Yazid, who cries in Sham? He says, a 4-year-old girl is crying. What does she want? She wants the head of her father. He says, take the head and give it to her then. The person carrying the head was in taqiyya. Lifts up the head with all of adab, he takes the head downstairs into the cell. As he comes into the cell, one imam was sitting there, he looks up and begins to cry. He says, oh person, if you didn't know how to carry the head of my father, you should have called me, I would have carried it. Don't you know when a hair used to break on my father's head, my grandmother would cry for 3 days. Takes the head. Takes the head, brings it, and he puts it on the chest of Sakina. Now look what the tradition says. Small girl opens up her eyes and says something. Says, Father, look at Nasib. Yesterday you would sleep on my chest. I would sleep on your chest. Today you're sleeping on my chest. But she says something else though. She says something else. In the process of saying this, she says, Father, forgive me that I stutter in my speech. Said when Shimmer slapped me on the face. Sham al-Ghariba. Imagine this. Then there's an entire discussion she has with the father, which I'm not going to raise, nor do I have the hal to raise it. Final thing I'll say is this though. Allah accept your ibadat today. Accept your du'as. Protect your families. Final thing I'll say is this though. They say that when Imam Zain al-Abidin was putting this 4-year-old girl into the grave, after sealing off the grave, a number of days later, Yazid gives the hukum to say, you're free to go. They say when everyone had gone, one person was missing. Say that Zainab knew who it was. She knew where to find her. Who was it? Sakina's mother, Rabab. She comes back. What does she see? She says her mother was lying there hugging a grave. Sometimes she would rock an empty cradle. Sometimes she'd hug a grave. Zainab asks her, she says, look, why don't you get up, why don't you go? She says, Zainab, what do I have to go for? I can see that my daughter is lonely here. I don't want to leave her lonely here. History says a very strange thing. It says Sakina was buried there. Look at it and see. Still to this day she's in a jail. Still to this day there's darkness. The tragedy of tonight is what one on Imam Hussein's head. Final thing is this. Just understand the love that Imam Hussein had for his daughter. You know what the tradition says? It says when Yazid was beating the lips of Imam Hussein, he was laughing. And this girl was shaking. In the process of shaking, Yazid says something. He says, Sakina, I heard your father loved you a lot. Did he really love you a lot? If he did, why don't you call him and see what he says? At that moment, the tradition says Sakina begins to cry, looks at her father, raises her hands, and she just says one thing. She says, Father, this Yazid is testing the love that you have for me. As she put her hands out, Hadith says the head began to move towards Sakina. When she grabbed the head, she started to cry. Why? Because the blood on Imam Hussein's face. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. For the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, may Allah accept all of our worship today. Allah accept your tears. Allah accept your hajat. Allah forgive and grant maghfirah to those people who have left us. Allah hasten to the hall of the Imam alayhi salam and make us all part of his ansar. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin matam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. ये नींद खाक पकैसी उठो उठो बीबी ये नींद खाक पकैसी उठो उठो बीबी ये नींद खाक पकैसी उठो उठो बीबी पिदर जो ख्वाब में आए मचल गई बच्ची फजाए कैद हरम की बुका से हिलने लगी लिपट के बाप के सर से वो मर गई बेटी तो कैद खाने में बानो कि ये फुगा गूंजी ये नींद खाक पकैसी उठो उठो बीबी कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, फसाना गम फुरकत सुनाऊं बाबा को, हुआ जो बाद शहादत सुनाऊं बाबा को, सफर की सारी मुसीबत सुनाऊं बाबा को, लिपट के बाबा से खामोश मत रहो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी। बहुत गिला था सकीना तुम्हें अंधेरे का, ये गम रहा के है तारीख के कैद में कुनबा, ये रंज था कोई चेहरा नजर नहीं आता, हमारे गम ज़दा चेहरों को देख लो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का। यकीन था तुम्हें लेने को आएंगे बाबा, तुम्हें सुकून हुआ मेरी लुट गई दुनिया, हमेशा तुमने सुनाया है हाल दिल अपना, गरीब माँ के भी दिल की तो कुछ सुनो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का। दुखे दिलों की तसल्ली तुम्हारी बातें थी, दिलों के जख्म का मरहम तुम्हारी बातें थी, हमारे गम का सहारा तुम्हारी बातें थी, हमारे गम का सहारा न छीन लो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, जो ऐसे हाल में देखे कफा न हो बाबा, जरा मैं साफ तो कर दूं ये खून कानों का, न पहने जाओ सकीना फटा हुआ कुर्ता, लहू में डूबी ये जुल्फे सवार लो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का। मैं कत्ल गाह में असगर को आई हूँ खोकर, सुहाग उजड़ गया वारिस नहीं रहा सर पर, गरीब माँ का सहारा नहीं कोई दिलबर, तुम इस तरह मुझे तन्हा न छोड़ दो बीबी, ये नींद का कि कैसी, उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का। खुले हुए दर जिंदा वक्त में रंजो महन तमाम कुनबे के हाथों से खुल गई है रसन। कहाँ गया मेरी बच्ची तुम्हारा शौक वतन, रिहाई मिल गई जिंदा से घर चलो बीबी। ये नींद का कैसी उठो उठो बीबी, ये नींद का कैसी।
या अली अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा। खैदी कहता है कोई, खैदी कहता है कोई, कोई यतीमा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता। मैं बयां कैसे करूं अपनी मुसीबत तुमसे, क्या करूं अपने तमाचों की शिकायत तुमसे। सुनती हूँ दादी ने खाया था तमाचा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता। नील रुखसारों पे बीनाई भी जिसकी कम हो, उम्र हो 4 बरस और कमर में खम हो। आपने देखी है क्या, आपने देखी है क्या ऐसी ज़ईफ़ा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता। खून बेशीर से अंदाज़ा किया था मैंने, आपका चेहरा तो पहचान लिया था मैंने। आप पहचानोगे कैसे मेरा चेहरा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा। उस घड़ी ढूंढ रही थी मैं चचा जान का सर, कैसे बतलाऊं कि क्या गुजरी तेरी बेटी पर।
मुझको जालिम ने कनीज़ी में जो मांगा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता। आप थे दूर तो मैं सारे सितम सहती रही, आप थे दूर तो मैं सारे सितम सहती रही। रो पड़ी कूफे के दरबार में मैं सह ना सकी, आपके सामने जब, आपके सामने जब शिम्र ने मारा बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा, अब मुझे कोई सकीना नहीं कहता बाबा।
توجه زيارة إن شاء الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على